And we are back with more News Talk Saga 960. So very glad you could join us on this edition of the Mark Petrona Show. Well, the Trudeau regime has taken dead aim at Russian disinformation in Canada. I didn't realize that it was such a big deal, but apparently our federal government thinks it's a very serious problem. That's why they've allocated $2.4 million through Pablo Rodriguez's department, an initiative aimed at cracking down on people who might be spreading Russian disinformation. Well, guess what? Andy Lee has been flagged by some as being one of those people who might be spreading Russian disinfo.
Yeah.
I mean, you can laugh if you want, but the Prime Minister himself has pointed out that this is a deadly serious thing. But we have some details now. And so Andy's going to be telling us a little bit about it. Andy, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. Yeah, so interesting times. Apparently, this is the greatest threat to the fabric of our society here in Canada right now is Russian disinformation. So there's a lot of funding going out the door. And of course, this comes hot on the heels of a study that was put out by the University of Calgary that listed many independent journalists and said that they were Russian disinformants, or that their accounts were used to spread Russian disinformation. So a lot of us challenged this. And the author of the study, Mr. Boucher, actually got back to me. So he is funded, his work is funded by the Department of National Defense. So, fairly serious what he does here. And so he actually did get back to me and said that he would reanalyze my case. And so he did that. And
wow, that's big of him. Yeah, that's... So after lying about you being a Russian stooge, let's see, but you're on a pretty good list here. Tulsi Gabbard, she's right at the top of the list. Jack Posobiec, Glenn Greenwald, Rupa, of course, whom we know. And where are you? You're kind of down on the list. You're after Denis Rancourt and Maxime Bernier.
Yeah, I have to.
You're one above. You're just above Ezra Levant.
I've got some work to do, there's no doubt. But anyways, so we did find actually the tweet. I didn't put it up on our Nest, unfortunately, but it was a tweet that was talking about Justin Trudeau. So you remember when Justin Trudeau was roasted by the European Parliament and called out by
yes,
Christine
of course.
Anderson. So
Christine Anderson, we had Christine on the show.
So I just pointed out that, the CBC headlines said that, Justin Trudeau was in Europe doing all this fantastic work for Ukraine and NATO. And I just said, well, that's not really, it seems to me like that's not exactly what happened at all. He got roasted by some parliamentarians for his own conduct in his own country. So, to me, that was the headline of the day. But anyway, so that was the tweet that was actually analyzed. And some people who apparently are pro-Russia like that. But I mean, there was nothing pro-Russia actually in it. Right? It was anti-government. So a little bit bonkers. And then
so what are they saying here, Andy? So if you have opinions that run counter to the agenda of the Trudeau regime, that somehow that makes you a Russian stooge, is that what they're getting at?
Well, I mean, it certainly looks that way. I mean, a lot of the people who were put on this list are not very happy about it. There's a lot of articles out there questioning it. And, while I respect the author of the study coming forward and talking to me about it, and I said, let's look into this more. And I've actually got some interesting projects that I would like to do. If you've got the software, I'd like to analyze how tweets are used and things like that. I think that's really interesting. So, I mean, good for them for doing that, but it was a pretty damning list to be put on. And, there was no sort of apology or saying, yes. So
well, is there going to be a lawsuit? I mean, are some people talking about that?
Well, I mean, there's definitely talks about lawsuits. I've talked to some of the other people on the list about filing a lawsuit for defamation, just because I think that the way that the study was put forward was very, very inappropriate and very, very dangerous, especially when a lot of these accounts are not spreading Russian disinformation at all, right?
No, of course not.
They couldn't identify even one tweet where I was guilty of doing this.
Well, it's just crazy. It doesn't make any sense.
So yeah,
I just can't understand why they're doing this.
Well,
except to say that they just consider you a dangerous person. Let's go over this tweet though from you. Today, Pablo Rodriguez announced $2.4 million to fight Russian disinformation, and then you referenced a study that was done in which you and Rupa Subramanya and Ezra and others were tied into Russian disinformation. But are you afraid that the disinformation cops are going to knock on your door and ask you a whole bunch of questions?
Well, I think that this is a definitely heads up. I think I don't know if they're going to be knocking on my door, but I do think it's taking us into a really troubling place, because this study was also, it was published in our MSM. It was published in all the outlets. They went through it. They never questioned the methodology behind the study, or whether the results were actually legitimate. They just published it. So that's, to me, that's a pretty dangerous place to be going, especially when, the authors themselves have been saying that maybe there was flaws in the study, and some people could have been perhaps inappropriately flagged, like myself. I think the author actually said, you may be one of those cases where you're an actual useful account, but bad actors latch onto you or something like that. So I'm like, well, I mean, that's not really fair. And then, of course, our government sees this brilliant opportunity to start funding a fight against Russian disinformation, which apparently we have an abundance of in our country.
Well, apparently, but let's test you. Let's put you to the test, okay, Andy, just to make sure that you're not spreading disinformation. I'm going to put something on the picture, and I want you to give me your reaction, okay? Don't wait. The first thing that comes into your mind, okay?
Okay.
All right. So we've got Putin on a horse with a shirt off. Have you now or ever harbored any sexual fantasies about this man or the horse he rode in on?
Well, I think this is going a little bit sideways. No, definitely not. But there was that wonky. Remember that wonky conference that Trudeau did with Boris, and they were talking about taking their clothes off?
Yeah. So obviously he's harbored some kind of.
Well,
he's got something going.
Well,
I'm just, because people might be knocking on your door. I'm just saying this, Andy. It's true that the Trudeau Gestapo might come by and accuse you of spreading Russian disinformation, and then they're going to say, "What do you think of this man?"
Putin's definitely not my dream leader. That's but anyways, let's talk more about this funding. So there's 2.5 million that was given out to fight this Russian. So it came from somebody called. It's going towards a project called the Digital Citizens Initiative. So there's been a lot of talk in the news. Blacklock's broke a wonderful story about this. They funded something called the Digital Democracy Project, and what these people did was they actually funded journalists to go on paid trips, and they were taught how to appropriately cover our elections. So, I think any independent journalist probably doesn't have to go on a funded trip and be told how to appropriately cover our elections. So that's a little bit weird. I looked at where else sort of this Digital Citizens Initiative goes to, where this funding goes to. A huge amount of it goes to Concordia University. So Concordia's got a school of journalism. And so what they do, and interestingly enough, Concordia's the Dean of Political Science actually has attended state dinners personally with Justin Trudeau. He actually set his plate at the White House dinner. So this is the Dean of Political Science. And so this is where a lot of these grants go. So, I'm kind of questioning this initiative because, like I said, they've done definitely some sketchy things in the past, like appearing to have bought off some of our journalists. So, when they're saying that they're going to be funding, a hunt for Russian disinformation, I'm extremely skeptical as to what it is that they're actually hunting. And of course, the other thing is that I believe the director of the the Digital Citizens Initiative is he's a liberal donor. He's Pierre-Marc Perrault. And so Pierre stood by Stephen Guilbeault's side and testified in front of the Ethics Committee on Bill C-10, right? So he was sort of there lobbying right by Stephen Guilbeault's side for censorship bills. So, when we have somebody who's testifying in our House of Commons on behalf of censorship bills pushed by Stephen Guilbeault that are receiving money, millions of dollars to fight Russian disinformation. I mean, I think that this deserves a little bit of closer scrutiny. I mean, I don't know, but
I guess I should be taking this a lot more seriously, but I just can't. Yeah. To me, this is like totally. Unfortunately, we're spending money allocating, maybe they're going to get that guy who was their anti-racism consultant. Since he's out now, maybe they can get him to work on the Russian disinfo stuff. Just an idea, since they obviously like this guy, this anti-Semitic dude.
Well, yeah, and so late.
Maroof.
These are what
Got to give him a job somewhere. He didn't fit in that area fighting anti-race. Maybe we could have him fight people who are spreading Russian disinfo. I don't know.
Well, I mean, he's certainly, would be the type of person. This isn't the first time that they've done this in our these institutions and things like that. And a lot of times when you peel off the veneer of these, this race grant and where they're going, and these, these race initiative projects that are being done and things like that, groups, a lot of times when you scratch at the surface, they don't hold up, right? They're a lot of times they're promoting a lot of really harmful ideas. And so, so Laith is one of those good examples. And Mark Goldberg, I put it up in a tweet. So he did actually warn, so he did warn, Pablo a good number of months ago that this was going on. So, I refuse to believe that anybody turned a blind eye to it. And I think it's sort of bonkers that we're focusing on this, like, we need a whole team to counter Russian disinformation in our country after a bunker study came out that maybe wasn't accurate. I mean, and this is what we're looking at, not maybe like looking at the racists who are actually getting this funding. I mean, it's just insane, Mark. What can I say? I mean, we should be taking this more seriously. It is pretty serious, but I'm just like, I'm so done here. I'm just like, I'm just like.
I mean, we're laughing, but this is serious business. They could easily come after you, Andy. I mean, here's the story. And this was just, I think, a Canadian press. Or it might have been CTV. Who knows? They're all the same. No, it's Canadian press. Prime Minister unveiling plans to create a special team focused on countering Russian disinformation and propaganda as Ukrainians prepared to mark the 6-month anniversary of Moscow's invasion of the country. The irony is, of course, you have a Ukrainian background, right? Aren't you like Ukrainian?
Yes. My dad is from Ukraine, so yes, I am Ukrainian as well. And we have family there still. So it's a little bit bonkers when you think about it. And like I said, I mean, I just see all these funding initiatives coming forward. And I'm going to say the same thing I said before with the Anti-Hate Network and other groups that have gotten funding. It's just to push for censorship laws.
I think so. Yeah. How much of this has to do with C11?
Well, I mean, I think
online censorship.
Well, I mean, I think we're going to see. I mean, it's hard to say when Parliament's not in, but I think we're definitely going to see this come up in the House of Commons. And like I said, when the study was put out, I kind of laughed it off. I was like, this is nuts. But I thought about it, and I was like, no, this is actually going to be probably used and introduced in our House of Commons to push for Bill C11. This is the sort of thing that Pablo Rodriguez salivates over. Anything.
Literally.
Yes. It's like
I gotta ask you about this other story too, because you're totally plugged into what's going on with China. Here's the Chinese warning the blackface regime about having Canadians, quote unquote, interfering in Taiwan. China has warned it will take forceful measures if Canada interferes in Taiwan. I guess interfering means just going there. A week after it emerged that a delegation of Canadian parliamentarians were planning a visit to the island later this year to explore trade opportunities. China doesn't like that. China claims Taiwan as its territory under its one China principle. Well, maybe, okay, you could say that there's one Taiwan principle. Just have Taiwan take over mainland China, and objects to foreign politicians visiting the island. Democratically governed Taiwan rejects China's claims. Quote, we urge the Canadian side to abide by the one China principle and respect China's sovereignty and territorial integrity, the Chinese embassy in Canada said. And I believe that Blackie himself has warned some people in his own country, saying, you know what, you better I call him Blackie sometimes just for sure.
No shade today. I can't believe you said that. Okay. Yeah, no, I think this is just a lot of grandstanding by the regime. I mean, they did the same thing when Pelosi was there, right? They buzzed Taiwan a little bit. sent out their jets, whatnot. So, I don't think that there's any genuine threat to Canada, right? Um, right now. So, I think that's all nonsense. I don't think that they're going to take any strong measures against us. They didn't do it after Pelosi visited. That's for certain. It was all a bunch of grandstanding. I think they'll send out some jets. They'll probably buzz Taiwan airspace. Show off a little bit. They put out some fantastic propaganda videos of them, storming beaches and things like that right after Speaker Pelosi's visit. So I don't think that, this is anything that we should take seriously. And I don't think Justin Trudeau, I think it was really weak of him to say we should think about the repercussions of us visiting Taiwan. That's sort of, no, that's like the complete wrong stance. And there's been some people who have put out some fantastic articles on that, saying that's the complete wrong way. No, we shouldn't have to think about our repercussions over visiting a sovereign island that's also an ally of ours.
Yeah, but China doesn't consider it a sovereign island. China considers it part of China.
Well, and you know what? Honestly, I was going back through. I should find it. We should do a story on this too. Like I was going back, and I actually have got statements from Christopher Freeland from Chinese state media, which I look at. I like to look at Chinese state media to find out what's going on sometimes. And so they do have statements apparently where, she said, yes, Canada firmly adheres to the one China principle. Back in the days when they were trying to broker and suck up to China to get a free trade agreement. So, that's another show that we should do. And, I should pull up all the state media. And I'm not going to say it's 100%. It is state media, right? Let's keep that in mind. So let's take it with a grain of salt, but that doesn't mean that it's
it's state-controlled media.
But that doesn't mean
controlled media. Yeah.
Incorrect, right? So I'm like, well, these are some really interesting statements that she's made in the past, regarding Taiwan and China, right? And how she, it will adhere to the one China policy and things like that. And like I said, we have to keep in mind it is state media, so take it with a grain of salt and don't take it for facts. But I am curious to see actually to try to find out what she actually said back in those meetings. So that's something that I'm looking for.
I have to ask you about the Rachel Gilmore incident, which I know you're familiar with this. Rachel reported that she was subject to threats and harassment by somebody who owned guns. I wrote about it on my Substack. By the way, we're speaking with Andy Lee, joining us from Calgary, in the beautiful province of Calgary, Alberta rather, which is in the midst of a leadership race for the UCP, for the United Conservative Party of Alberta. Are you at all tuned into that?
Yeah, a little bit. Not as much. I'm more federal than provincial politics, but I'm going to be covering it. They've got some events coming up, so I'll probably be attending some of those events and things like that. So,
have you met Danielle Smith?
Have I met her in person? No, but we've spoken before. So, I think she's a really strong candidate. I like her a lot. I think she's got a good chance. She's coming under heavy fire. But anyways, yeah. So if you want to talk about Rachel, what do I think about Rachel?
Yeah, that's her there. Okay, so she's reporting that she was subject to harassment, and she was possibly threatened, and which nobody wants to see that. We've seen a release from the Prime Minister's office himself pointing to this disturbing trend involving, apparent threats against reporters. And so she came out and said that somebody had threatened her and that the police were called. I tried to contact the police department myself about this. I did contact them and to get some information, and alas, they have not given me much of anything. Here's the tweet. Last night, someone who clearly owns guns directly threatened and harassed my entire family. I'm speaking to police about this, but it's already forcing my loved ones to take precautions. You can disagree with my reporting, you can critique it, but don't threaten my family. All I did was I said, look, I'm sorry to hear about this. Do you know the person who made the threat? Will Global News be reporting on the incident? Would you agree to be interviewed on this? So far, I've not received any response at all. Now she's still getting some backlash from people who don't think that this is serious. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I do think it's serious. Like I've seen some of the comments made towards her. I do think it's serious. I do think that there's a lot of ugliness directed towards her. And, I myself have not gone after her because I'm just sort of like, I think she's had enough. She's been through enough. And I hope that she finds her path. But she seems content to throw a bit of fuel on the fire. Not that that means that this is warranted. I will say though, after people posted my personal information online, I did receive some threats that I thought were pretty serious. People said I should be locked and loaded, like as in I should be ready for a gunfight. So I filed a police report before for harassment. And the police came to my house very, very quickly. They responded almost immediately. They were there within half an hour. They were like, we have to take this extremely seriously. So we filed a report and things like that with cybercrime. Got the sites taken down and things like that. So, so I hope that, if this is serious, then, the police are taking it seriously. Like I said, they took mine very, very seriously. So, I'm not really sure what to say about Rachel right now, but like I said, I don't want to,
What do you suppose, what do you suppose triggers some of the criticism against her? Is it her reporting, her obvious biases against conservatives? What do you think it is?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think I said, like, I don't think we can condone this ever, but I do think that, we should all be cognizant of how we put information out. And not saying that you deserve that sort of backlash or anything, but I do think that we have to understand that we are all fueling this media machine right now together. And we should try to maybe be better and make it a healthier sort of online ecosystem where we're reporting and, we're being compassionate and things like that to each other, right? And that's something that I have to do as well, right? For myself. So, I'm not just it's good for you and it's not good for me. Like I said, I've looked really, really hard, especially because this Russian disinformation study, I was actually, I did sort of reflect and I was like, well, what sort of an ecosystem am I creating here? What am I doing? Am I creating division?
I don't think you are at all. I think you're creating, I think you drive them crazy because you're so factual and you're so reasonable in your arguments. But I have to ask you about this too. CTV News in that report, I don't think it's their story, but dangerous heat predicted to hit 3 times more often in the future. Now, I retweeted that and said, drop that hamburger before it's too late, because I think that's really the message here is you'd better start eating crickets instead of meat, and you better start living in a pod. So I don't know. How much of this is fear mongering and how much of it is fact?
CBC did a story this morning. The eating crickets is all false. It's a conspiracy theory. It's pushed by alt-right people who are linked to convoy protests. They don't actually want us to eat crickets or get rid of meat. Yeah, I mean,
they don't. Oh, okay. Wow.
Well, that's what CBC says. You can bring that story up. It was like the alt-right media has fueled conspiracy theories and things like that.
Well,
right?
you can buy crickets. I mean, you could actually. I know it's served.
Well, I mean, we've got a big cricket.
Have you tried? Have you tried any cricket burgers?
Like, no, I'm not going to eat a cricket burger. No, thank you. I'll stick to my Burton Angus beef. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I do think we're going to see a lot of the climate stuff ramping up, right? A lot of people were pointing to China's drought. China is having some trouble with the drought. But, it's really hard to say what their temperatures are like because historically they've only kept a track of the temperatures for about the last 60 years or so. So they don't have the full scope, right? So they can't go back, the way that some people can because they haven't been recording it. So, yeah, which is really, really odd, I think. But anyways, I think Michael Schellenberger did a great Substack on that. So, yeah, I mean, we've all seen, the weather channels. It used to be green. We all thought summer's here, yay. And now all of a sudden, when the weather comes on and it's like 24 degrees, it's like blazing red, right? Like, oh my gosh, it's a heat catastrophe. So yeah, I mean, is the climate agenda being pushed hard? Sure it is. Of course it is. There's, a lot of people today, there's more stories coming out today saying, the nitrogen fertilizer reductions that are being put into our yeah, there we go.
The
Yes.
CBC no. Well, I guess CBC reported on it. A massive cricket processing facility comes online in London, Ontario. Did you know there is a massive cricket facility that was built in Ontario owned by Bill Gates?
Yeah, got quite a
There
bit
you
of I
go.
reported
So
on it
I thought
too.
I thought it was just a conspiracy theory
Well, I
by
know, and then
the
today,
alt-right. Here it is in London, Ontario.
no, and then today they said, now it's all about conspiracy theories and eating bugs. I'm like, well, I mean, we got it from somewhere. Guess what? So, yeah, I mean, I think that this does go hand in hand with attacking the farmers, right?
Yeah, that's
Um,
very disturbing. And we've had
yeah.
Terry Ritz, the former agriculture minister, come on and talk about that.
Oh, really? I'd love
He's
to come on and
a
talk to Terry.
really smart guy, very well-spoken guy. Yeah.
So I
And it's
think that,
a serious situation. Are they talking about that in Alberta?
yeah,
Or
I
maybe the
mean,
feds,
talking
the
about it.
people, the feds, the federal agents have not bothered going into Alberta. Maybe they're afraid. I wonder if they're a little
Well,
bit.
well, I don't know. Apparently, in Saskatchewan, they're sneaking onto people's farms, according to Premier Scott Moe. So, I mean, what's going on here, right? Yeah, and that's an interesting story. And of course, Stephen Guilbeault, who always tells the truth, always, 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 never lies, came up firing back at that, saying, "No, we are not sort of trespassing on private farmers' property." So he said that that's not happening. So it's going to be really interesting because our MPs are looking into that, and Premier Scott Moe himself has said basically stay off of our farmers' lands, climate change police. So yeah, so I think it'll be really great. I'm sure there's a lot of access to information requests going in on that one. Whether we'll ever get them back, we don't know. So yeah, and I do think that this climate change is going to be ramped up, especially ahead of this sort of attack on farmers. And I'm not. I think August 31st. There's an online survey where you can go and you can put in your input. So anybody who's listening, who's a farmer, please go onto the government website, give them your input into the fertilizer reduction policies that they would like to institute. Have your say be heard. Let them know that you don't like it. And, if that fails, well, guess what? There's always a convoy. And I love leading.
Last time you took part in something like that, even covering it as you did, you got in trouble. You had your own account frozen, did you not?
Yeah.
I mean,
But you know what? It didn't stop me.
did you get any satisfaction out of that? Did you get any resolution? Did anybody apologize to you for freezing your account?
No. Well, so they just reached out to me and said that they would because even after it was unfrozen by the fraud department, I still couldn't e-transfer. So I had my ability to e-transfer taken away for months and months. And so the day that Scotiabank apologized to Dictor, the day that he put that letter out, they also reached out to me and said, we're going to reinstate your ability to e-transfer. So I didn't get a formal apology. I do have some questions in with the bank. I'd like to know more about why specifically what transactions were flagged and things like that got my bank account locked down. I think that would be really good to know. So lots of work to do. It's always busy in our country. I mean, how did our country get so exciting? Honestly, the things a bad government does to your country, it's just wild.
Well, you see, that will get you in trouble, Andy. You know that.
Well, you
They'll
know
be
what?
coming after you, accusing you of, secretly wanting to be Putin's girlfriend. They're going to come after you.
Well, you know what? I don't care. I'll go and I'll lead a whole bunch more farm equipment back into Edmonton any day. I had no problem doing it before. I do hope that they watched that and thought, do we really want to be do we want to be the Netherlands? Is that what we want to go with this? In light of the fact that it only took a couple hundred truckers to shut down the capital. Do we really want to mess with the millions of farmers, right? So we'll see. And it was hopefully this input, that they're gathering and things like that. Hopefully they take that to heart and listen to the farmers who know their trade. Fertilizer, things like that. It's very, very expensive. like it costs a lot of money. They're not just going to be like, yeah, let's just throw fertilizer everywhere, right? Like they've got like they don't do that because it's expensive. It costs them a lot of money. So, they've got soil specialists who come out and test the soil and give them, the formulas that they should be using to optimize their growth and minimize their usage, right? So it's a science, it's an art. Right? It's not just like, let's heat up Earth, right? And throw fertilizer everywhere. That's not what they're doing. So anyways, hopefully the government takes these, these things to heart and listens to the inputs.
They're not going to listen, Andy. You know that, and I know that. They're scum. They need to be thrown out on their butt. Actually, they need to be thrown in prison.
Well, I mean,
yeah, but I'll tell you, they don't like my survey. Did you put did you cast a did you cast a ballot, by the way?
no,
I hope you did. I'll be disappointed if you didn't.
I think I did. What's the survey?
You didn't see it? Oh.
No.
My survey is, who does Justin Trudeau actually work for?
Oh.
Is it the Chinese?
I think I did cast a vote. I think I
Does he vote? Does he, or the World Economic Forum, Soros, or the Rockefeller Foundation? Those were the choices. I had like 3,000 people cast a ballot, and Jerry Butts, he didn't like it at all. He commented.
Did he really?
He made some disparaging comments about me in another tweet. But yeah, so you did vote. I'm glad. Which one did you vote for? What do you think?
China, of course.
You voted for who?
I voted for China, of course. But most people voted for the World Economic Forum.
Everybody voted. That's what won. Everybody, 75%.
Yeah, well, I mean, we should do a show on the World Economic Forum because it's sort
okay.
of
Yeah. What do you know about? Okay. I mean, we can't start now because we've got it back in. But
I mean, like, I think it deserves. It's an organization that deserves scrutiny. But are they like the supervillains of planet Earth? No, I don't think.
Well, what do you think of Klaus Schwab? Do you think he's a supervillain? He looks like it. He sounds like one.
He looks like one and he sounds like one. Do I think he is one? No, I think he's a very, very strange man who had a lot of deep ties to China, who thought he could revolutionize the world. But he never took into account the fact that we've got authoritarian dictatorships and awful regimes and that they will never be brought into the fold. So globalization failed. That's what I think about Klaus. But yeah, I mean, we can do a whole story about him and his history in China and things like that. It's really, really interesting, how the World Economic Forum was born. And China's always been absent, has always had great influence, the World Economic Forum. Yeah, and it'd be a big show to do.
All right.
So I think it's one of those.
Anyway, you got to come back soon because I know you were working on some stories and related to what, China?
Yeah, well, it's funny. We've got some former high-level government advisors who advise prime ministers, not just Justin Trudeau, but other prime ministers. And they've all mysteriously turned and have gone to lobby for a Chinese company.
Wow, so amazing. Maybe you were right to choose. You were right to choose China.
Justin Trudeau.
Only 12.7% picked China. 75.4% picked.
Well, they're on the. I'll tell you, if they think the world economic is the biggest threat to Canadian
it's China. Now you might be right.
Absolutely not.
Andy, thank you so much for coming on the show. But come back. You got to come back soon, okay?
Well, and you know what? I'd love to bring a guest, actually. I've been doing some work. I'm starting to do some work about Iranian influence in Canada as well. There's some fantastic foreign advisors who, are really, really brilliant geopolitical analysts. They look at Iranian influence in our country. And I think it's sort of, it's a place where not a lot of people look. And so it's really, really interesting. So I'd love to come back and actually bring some of those people that I've been working with on some stuff and talk about Iranian influence, the regime's influence in Canada and things like that, and how the IRGC operates in our country.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah. Andy Lee coming to us from beautiful Calgary, Alberta.
Enjoy Florida, Mark. I'm going to get out there to visit you one of these days. I'm going to wait till it snows, though.
Come on. Lots of room here. It's a nice day. It's not that hot in the summer. I mean, people think it was really uncomfortable here, but I don't think it's that bad. And listen, I miss Canada. Are you kidding? Especially in the South. I want to come home, but they won't let me.
Don't do it.
They're standing by at the border.
Don't do it. Let us hold the line, all right?
I'm coming home one day. This is just a temporary exile.
Okay.
All right. See ya.
Okay, take care. Bye, Mark.
Bye. And let's take a break. Back with more on News Talk Saga 960 and the Mark Petrona Show after this.